Welcome to KKC Consulting, the fourth episode where we chat to industry connections to uncover the journey behind the scenes of various different industries such as sales, entrepreneurship, literally anything you might think of. Today, I have the opportunity of having Daniel Steinfield with me. Daniel, thank you so much for being here on the show with me. He's an
My
absolute role
pleasure.
model in the real estate market and the co-founder of the Block Realty, on the Block Realty, sorry. So, Daniel, do you mind just giving a little bit of an introduction about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, so like you said, I'm a broker owner, started a company called On the Block. It's a real estate brokerage. It's also started as the only real estate auction platform in the country, which was how we got started. And now I do a bunch of other things as well to keep busy. So I was in finance prior to this. I started in accounting at PricewaterhouseCoopers. I worked for about 10 years with the Toronto Argonauts Football Club
Right.
as their CFO and as their VP sales. Whole bunch of stuff in between. I'm also a podcaster like you. I just
Yeah, yeah.
launched a new podcast. Actually, I just put the first episode out yesterday after my last one ended after 210 episodes of the first one. But so that's something I'm focusing a lot on and excited about. And other stuff, I'm sure that'll come up. I volunteer a lot. I'm on a couple of boards, um, father of four, and other things as well.
No, I'm sure we'll get through everything this podcast. But just really quickly, let's start from the beginning, right? Had Schulich as your undergrad. Do you mind walking us through your journey at Schulich? Anything you might have learned and just how that shaped your perspective?
Sure. I started at Schulich. It would have been in 2000 for context, so
Right.
little while ago.
Yeah.
And, but my guess is you were not born yet in 2000.
I
Um,
wasn't.
yeah, no, I started in 2000 doing a BBA undergrad. It was in if most of the people listening are Schulich students, this was when we were still in the old building. The building you're in wasn't built yet. Um,
Really?
and yeah, and didn't really have a clear concept of what I wanted to do, which is a good thing. That would definitely be if you've got anybody, first, second, even third year students who still don't quite know what they're doing. That was me. That's okay. Um, and I just got really involved at school. I volunteered. I was in student government on what is now, I think, called what's it called? Your business, your
UBS?
student council,
I was
UBS.
gonna
Yeah.
say
So it was
UBS.
UBC then, same thing. But yeah, UBS. So I was on that second, third, and fourth year. Um, I helped start the Apex conference, which I still think exists now. I
Yeah,
think
I'm
I
pretty
don't
sure it
think that's
does.
disappeared yet.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we were the first year of that. And just got really involved in a lot of stuff. And that was the most important thing for me coming out of my shell, meeting a lot of people, developing relationships that I still have today that have led to a lot of opportunity and kind of always give me somebody to call and give other people me to call when they need something as well.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I mean, obviously classes happened also, but for me, I mean, that was it was obviously important to do well, but I think everyone who got into Schulich, I mean, the nature of the beast is you're all, well-performing students. So
Right.
that was, I think that the most important thing there was not beating myself up about trying to be the best student because you're in there among so many overachievers. It was more about finding what I liked, what was important to me, and slowly charting a path of where I was going to end up, which I'm still doing now, 24 years later.
Right. That's that's so interesting. 2000. You started in 2000. So
2000, yeah, I'm an
maybe
'04 grad.
that's sick. No, that's really nice. But just through your Schulich undergrad, what were some courses that you liked a lot? Was there any like a major difference in courses back then? Because I know this year they introduced Schulich courses specifically, but how was it back
Oh
in
yeah,
your
no,
time?
it was still yeah, it was still Schulich courses. Like we'd go there for the courses. There were maybe a couple of electives in at
Right.
York, which, I'd assume that's still the same now. They want, you to be
Oh,
able
they
to
switched it up completely. There's
so
no
you can have any electives at any outside of Schulich. There's none.
No, 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 sorry. We can have electives, but like last year they had York Finance. This year they changed everything to Schulich. So like it's
Got it.
Schulich management, Schulich, forgetting
Okay.
my courses, accounting and everything.
Yeah, no, like yeah, accounting and economics and yeah, no, I think that the courses are probably similar to what they were. I think
Right, right.
my biggest kind of complaint, which I still have today because I still don't think they have it, but maybe they do, was there was never a course, definitely not a mandatory course in sales. And
I
as a
agree with that.
business
Yeah,
school, you
yeah.
know, business is rooted in not sales like, hey, want to buy a watch sales, but
Right.
like relationship building, communication skills. It innately comes through some of the other courses, but really until you hit the quote unquote real world, you're not as equipped as I would like to see people being in that
Right.
as business students. Because to me, sales is a huge part of business. Um, but as far as the courses I did, I mean, management was good. That was sort of an overall business view. When I got into third and fourth year, there was an ethics elective. So I'm a BBA, but I'm also I got sort of it wasn't really a minor, but they had what was sort of certificates that went with your
I
diploma, and I
see.
got that in professional ethics in addition to the BBA. Um, I thought that that was a really cool course, and some of the lighter courses that still had kind of smart things to them, like philosophy
I
and
see.
logic was a course I really liked. I'm not a scientific guy, as I'm learning now. My oldest daughter is taking grade 10 science, and this is the first class I can't even like. I have to learn her course just to be able to answer her questions, and I have no bloody idea. But but yeah, I mean that like the math stuff. I was never kicking ass in any of the subjects in isolation necessarily. I didn't take an accounting specialized course until fourth year, so
I see.
that's one of those things that kind of point to not knowing what you want to do with yourself. Like I thought I was a marketing student coming into Schulich because I like, being creative and I thought that was all about like making commercials and stuff.
Right.
Um, it's not that there's anything wrong with marketing, but I guess, the opportunities bring you in different directions and accounting landed up being the stream I got into late, landed up having to do night courses after I graduated to get the necessary accounting
Interesting.
classes to get my CA. Um, so I was still in school once I started working. Even though I had graduated, I just needed more accounting credits because I didn't graduate
Yeah.
with enough accounting to get the CA. So everybody's story is different. There weren't really any courses that totally sucked, which is nice. In high school, I had those, but in
Yeah.
university, I think again, my attitude changed. Like high school was all about like I need the 90s to get into university. In university, it was like, all right, I'm not going to be like, there's no valedictorian. I'm not like going for that. It's more about
Right.
balance, having a good, like I met my wife in Frosh Week, right? So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was like it was a different dynamic. Like there was more of a social element in university than I had in high school, but still I had to stay disciplined, keep my eyes on the prize and still get the marks I needed to still get out into the working world. I wasn't like tanking my classes. It just wasn't life.
Right. No, I agree with you because especially in grade 12, I just had it last year. There was so much emphasis on just getting the high grade. I swear every single person in my class was cheating. Every single person. Like I won't say whether
Probably.
I was cheating or not, but almost
This is
everyone
being
was just
recorded.
I didn't admit if I was cheating or not. I'm a pretty hardworking student, so I like to be by the books. But
That's good.
essentially the problem was no one was really absorbing the like literally chemistry. I swear I could ask anyone any sort of chemistry question, no one would know the answer for it. Just because it was all heavily just get the high grades, it doesn't matter about the knowledge, right? But then
Right.
coming into
Right.
here, I feel like it's a bit more like try to understand the knowledge, try to understand the supply and demand curves, all that sort of
For
stuff. But
sure.
kind of touching upon what you said about sales, like thankfully at a young age, I'm starting to realize this, but sales is a pretty massive part of business, right? Like even if you go into finance consulting, I would say those are
Yep.
like kind of the two biggest motivators for students. But especially in consulting where you're talking to people all day, and even in finance when you're doing deals, mergers and acquisitions and all that, I actually don't understand how there is no sales course specifically just for, creating that connection, right?
It's strange. It is strange. I mean, even in accounting, believe it or not, like I found that's what set me apart when I got into accounting because people were just like every subject churns out robots, really, not just
Right,
Schulich. It's just like, you're taught to do things a certain way. And I mean, in when you're dealing with mathematical things, finance or whatever, like there are equations you have to follow. Like you don't break the rules because it seems
right,
smarter, right? Like accounting is accounting. But I think, living a successful life in a lot of ways is just about differentiating yourself and being
right,
able to, you know, uh, be excited about what you're doing each day. And to me, accounting couldn't be farther from exciting. Like I went into it, but I wasn't
right.
excited about it. So I made it exciting. And part of that was you needed to bring a certain element of sales or a certain element of like personality. Because really
Like
that's all like
flair. Yeah,
sales is
yeah,
just like it's just communication is all it is.
right,
And it shocked me that not just the kids who came out of university with me, but like our managers, it was just like this vanilla black and white robotic approach to
right,
things,
right,
which isn't wrong. It's just you're not going to you're not going to get anywhere off of that linear path if you
right,
just stay on the linear path. So know the rules, follow the rules, but bring some personality to it, right? And know that there's more out there always than what you're doing. Even within what you're doing, there's opportunity. You don't have to be, all right, it's 2 years and then I'm a senior manager, then it's 2 more years and I'm a this, and then it's 3 more years and I'm a this, and then partners over there. It's like that could be your goal. There's nothing wrong with that. But if there's a part of you that's saying, like, is there more? Like, there's always more for people. There's always more that,
right,
and I don't mean money necessarily, just things that keep you excited.
right, right.
Because I mean, I've got a lot more perspective now, and I feel like talking on a podcast today, and even the new podcast I'm doing, has a different vibe than what I've been like for the last 10 years. Because I think like even when we first met up, I had told you like I'm coming off a pretty heavy surgery, pretty heavy health scare that doesn't
Right,
happen to people my age. And with that comes, you know, taking a deeper look at the stuff that we
right,
do,
right.
right? It's not changing the way that I'm living my life, but it's definitely like, oh shit, yeah, like I didn't
Changes your
do that like
perspective, right?
everybody else.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally. So I think I bring that with a little bit more knowledge of the impact of being yourself and knowing what you want and chasing stuff because YOLO, right? It's
No, I
so
agree with that. And also the idea of like not always having a goal in mind, but especially because as soon as you reach that goal, what else is there, you know? Like
right.
I'm not sure if you're
Yep.
familiar with Alex Hormozy, but
Mhm.
big guy, like physically and also in terms of the whole sales aspect of things. He was describing a story on a podcast one time, and he was saying that his dad wanted him to become a doctor, right? His dad was one of the best in the doctor field. So he became a doctor. He was in his apartment complex. He was looking out the window. He achieved everything that his dad wanted him to achieve. But then he was just thinking, like, what else is there? What's the point of like, just working in general? Because he just didn't have, it was just a linear path, as you said, the vanilla black and white. As soon as he became a doctor, there was nothing else. And then just gave up the doctor thing, went into a new place and started sales, and now he is who he is today, right? So
Right.
it's the idea of always having like the confidence in yourself, always being able to stray away from the linear path. And I feel you 100% probably went off this, especially since you have so many different experiences, right?
Well, and continue to have more. Like I think it's like a drug, right? Like you get the itch of like
Yeah,
what doing something new is like, and you just start asking yourself, well, what else is out there? What else is out there?
right,
And I think part of it, and we might have talked about this the last time we spoke, like part of it is just learning what you don't like also,
right, right.
right? Like trying things when you have the ability to try things, you should do because what's the worst thing that happens? Okay, you know
Exactly,
what?
yeah.
Check the box. It's not for me. Cool. I'm not going to pursue that. But then you have the opportunity to find and realize things you didn't know interested you or that you want to learn more about or get, experience in. I never thought I'd be in real estate. Like that was not, I never thought I'd be in accounting. I never thought I'd work for a football team. Like all these things are just like, they come, I never thought I'd be a podcaster. Like all these things. I definitely never thought I'd have 4 kids. So, you know, you don't know unless you go there and always weigh cost benefit, understand your limitations. It doesn't mean just do everything. Like,
Right, right,
but, but I think if you're in a situation where you have the opportunity to try something and the worst case scenario is you're just not going to like it and it'll take a few hours or a few days of your whatever, I
just
don't
go
see
for it.
much
Yeah,
reason not to. Um, because that's really where every opportunity I've had has started with taking a chance on something I really didn't know or feel was for me.
right,
And there's been just as many things I've tried that have sucked, and I'm like, okay, never ever doing this again. But
right.
at least I know, no regrets.
And that's the nice thing about it all. Like, for example, I have this stock pitch that I have to create by 12 a.m. today. So I have approximately 12 hours to complete that. I had no idea it was due today. Like literally yesterday, a friend just told me that there's a stock pitch you can complete. But at first, I had no idea what a stock pitch was. After like really researching it, and an older year went through a stock pitch with me one time, I really started to get like interested in it, you know? Like I had no
Yeah,
idea that I'd be interested in analyzing a company's financial statements, creating an investment thesis, all these type of things, but it's always just trying to start it out. And it's literally even in my past, like haircutting. At first I did it for the money, I'll be honest, but then I actually started enjoying it, right? Like getting that nice taper, that nice fade, everything in that realm. It's just so
yeah,
important to always try new things. And the best thing I probably have is my age. That I can try a bunch of things and there's literally no consequence, which is
for sure.
amazing.
Like that's the truth. And that was the same thing with me. Like I know it always feels like, oh, I'm too old for this or I'm too whatever. It's just no, like you've got the freedom to like, I assume you're not married, you have no kids,
Not
you're not
yet.
paying a mortgage. So just like roll with that. And even once that all happens, it's not like, oh shit, it's all over for me now because
Right,
now I've got like a real life to worry about. But it's just your ability to weigh, the impact of a decision. There's more stakeholders involved, right?
right.
The older you get. Um, but that's okay. I don't think it hasn't stopped me, right? Thankfully, I've got maybe it's because my wife also went to Schulich, but she's of a similar mindset where
Right.
we've kind of identified we're going to try as much stuff as possible and, you know, take it where it goes.
No, that's nice. It's really nice that you actually met your wife in Frosh Week as well. I remember the first time you told me that I was so shocked that
Well, it's unusual. I mean, it happens, I guess, but it was yeah, it was. I mean, the reality is I chased her and caught her. It
I mean
wasn't
that's
like
a
it wasn't like we saw each other across the Frosh like event and like it was love at first sight or anything like that.
no,
But it worked out in the end.
no, that's the important thing, right? And then she was also co-founder of On the Block Realty, right?
Yep,
Alongside with you.
yep,
That's nice.
yep. We
Now,
started that. Yep.
no, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. I was just saying
What
now, yeah, now just diving back into kind of your professional journey, if you're good with that, of course. I kind of wanted to ask you about your journey with PwC as well, especially how that kind of shaped you as well, because you did mention earlier on this podcast that, it was really black and white. So how was your experience with PwC and understanding, for lack of better words, the matrix?
uh I mean, what you mean like what was my experience like when I was there or how I joined them in the first place?
Both.
Or I mean, joining them was I guess it was a function of some of the stuff that I was involved in at Schulich. So again, like I wasn't taking accounting courses, so it wasn't something I was pursuing. But through council and through, case competitions and a lot of what it was then, and I'm sure what it still is now, a lot of the people who sponsor these events are the recruiters and the accounting firms and all
Right,
that. So
right,
I developed some stronger relationships with them with no real intention to ever work there. Um, but again, like we sort of hit it off personality wise, and I had a summer term at PwC again, just to try. Like it was there as an opportunity, and I gave it a try. And the reality is, when you're done third year and you finished a summer term and you're going into fourth year, and that company offers you a full-time job for when you graduate, it's not a automatic sign me up, but that's a pretty compelling thing
Right.
when you know you're going to be good to go coming out of school, right? It makes your fourth year at school a lot less stressful. You're not things. So I did sort of follow that, and the summer term was good and all that. So I worked there, and I figured, again, like if I'm going to put in 2.5 years and get a CA, that's something people can't take away from me, regardless of what my long-term outcome is. Um, and so I went to PwC not because of accounting, but because the nature of the gig is almost consulting like. Like you're there and you're
I see.
diving into every part of a business, right? Like you're auditing their financials, but the financials touch on literally everything. So you might not be necessarily giving strategic advice, but you're seeing a lot of companies, you're seeing bones of the company and how they work, where things are going well, where they're not, and the impact of things on other things. So, in effect, you're learning business,
Right.
right? Sorry, couldn't call it all. I'll skip here. Um,
No worries.
in effect, you're learning business, and by doing that, it really did prepare me for just understanding how business works and how it doesn't work, because not everybody you audit is in great shape either, right? The other side of the job is you are uh, expected to communicate and relate to the client. So it's
Right.
not a sitting at a desk, you know, clicking away and not talking to anybody. It can be, but for me, that was sort of where I wanted to be different. So I made sure that, the managers, especially when I had introverted managers, they were happy that their associate would go and deal with the client. Like it was just one less thing for them to do. But for me, that was the best part of the job
Right.
because I was joking them up and I was loosening up the room because nobody likes an auditor, right? Like
Right.
you're going in there to, yeah, you're signing their financials, but ultimately you're there to find and diagnose mistakes. And, so everybody there is sort of all bunched up and nervous. So for me, that was a big part of the job, was just getting to know people, understanding even the differences in what our objective was and what their feelings were as a client, which again, this is all just sales. Like if we're
Right.
needing information from someone who hates the fact that we're there, there's a way to get that so that everybody's happy at the end instead of them just like hating you and like wanting at all costs to not give you what you need to do your job, which happens. So just lots of cool experiences there. I was never ever gonna last there. Oh, like I went in knowing I wasn't gonna be staying there. It
Right.
was all about get the CA and get out.
I see. You kind of just wanted to take off as many lessons as you could for interacting with other people, and then obviously the CA as well from PwC.
That was the goal. And I mean, and what landed up happening is I left there before I even had the hours to get my CA. So the same way I didn't have
Right.
my
You told
accounting
me. Yeah.
classes at
Yeah.
Schulich. Yeah, so like I got the opportunity from the Argos, and I wasn't gonna, again, like I wasn't gonna pass it up. And so I said, I'll figure out this hours thing later, which landed up being a whole sales pitch of itself because I did get the hours, but that's another story. Um, but it was just stay here for another whatever 6 months and turn down this really cool opportunity, or take the opportunity and we'll figure out the other part later, kind of thing, which is what I ended up doing.
Right. Oh, that's sick. That's sick. And now, kind of moving on, you mentioned the football club a few times, but do you mind walking us through your football club's experiences as well? Just any anecdotes that you have from that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up a lot at the football club. So, I mean, I started there young. I started with a job in sponsorship. I was the manager of their corporate partnerships, which is fancy word for sponsorships. Um, and got that connection also through people I knew from school. Um, and just right place, right time,
Right.
very unusual, not the way it usually works, but you meet enough people and you make enough relationships, good things happen when you don't expect it. Started in sponsorship, but then again, opportunity of the fact that I had gotten into accounting and had that knowledge, shocking as it might be, there's not a lot of accounting professionals in a football team, right? Like it's just
Right.
not something that they have a lot of. And this was around the time leading up to the Vancouver Olympics. And
I
so
see.
the CFO of the Argos and the president of the Argos were set to and became the president and CFO of the Vancouver Olympics Media Consortium. So
Wow.
basically, like the TSN, CTV, like that whole world of the Olympics, they went there. And through luck, again, being basically the senior most person in the company who knew accounting, they figured rather than go and headhunt and figure out who our next CFO is going to be, they basically, it was like a 3 to 6 month, almost like an apprenticeship where I was selling sponsorship, but I was also working with the CFO.
Right.
And I transitioned into the role and I ended up being CFO and VP finance for about 4 or 5 years. Um, and then, that was because of a background I had that I didn't want, right? That turned into something that was very useful. Um, and then through that, going back to sales experience and my knowledge of the business and all that, it transitioned into me becoming the VP of sales after being CFO. I wore two hats at the same time for a bit, which was really weird because
Right.
the
Right.
objectives of the two roles are opposite. Like a VP sales wants to spend and a CFO wants to save
Same.
money.
Yeah.
So I was like battling in my brain what I even wanted. Um, but anyway, I mean, it all came sort of together, and the 100th Grey Cup was in Toronto, which was a huge event back in 2012. That was when I had transitioned into sales. So that was my job, was to sell, I mean, the Argos, but to sell that game, which to this day, as far as I know, is the highest grossing outdoor event in Canadian history. Like
Wow.
in anything, like in sports, concerts, anything. Might even be the highest grossing event, like single day event, because I can't think of an indoor event that would have grossed more. Um, but yeah, like that
Yeah, no,
one
that'd
day
be
did about 13 million bucks in revenue for that one day
one
of
day.
tickets. So uh yeah, I don't know if that's public knowledge. Well, I guess it can't be public knowledge. Who cares? Um, but yeah, so I mean that was a really cool thing, and it's not that it was a hard thing to sell because everybody wanted a ticket to the 100th Grade Cup of such a cool event, and Bieber did halftime, and we had so many like reasons people would buy tickets, but it was about taking something that historically might have been, call it a $5 or $6 million event, and how do we like the strategy behind maximizing that and literally extracting every dollar that existed out of the paying public,
Right.
creating seats where there weren't seats and like all these things um was a really cool experience. So that was and then we won the game, which you couldn't
Right.
have written a better script. Like we were there, so I was like celebrating the big revenues and how big the game was and how successful the event was. And then the next thing you know, we're on the field with confetti
Oh,
lifting
that's
the
sick.
cup,
Yeah, yeah,
you
that's
know,
sick.
and I'm sort of living vicariously because obviously I didn't play the game, but being on the executive of the team, like
Shared the
I
passion, right?
was I was one step removed. Like, I got the ring and I got, we went to all the parties and we toured with the cup and all that stuff. So
Right.
it was very cool. But also sort of like you said with goals, it's like you do that, right? You win the biggest game, the biggest version of the biggest game at home. You
Right.
sell more than you're ever going to sell in any other game because you're never going to equal that again. It's like, okay, well, that was a goal. We hit that. How much more do I have to achieve here? Right? Like it was fun. Like it never stopped being fun. Like working for a football team in a lot of ways is what you'd picture it is. Like it's debauchery. It's crazy. But but I learned a lot over, I mean, it was almost 10 years there, and it was really learning business. It was learning to balance, work and life, as cliche as that is. I was starting, we were having kids when I was there. Um,
I see.
and so I mean, real life played a part in my transition out of there as well. And business played a part. Like, truth be told, like I don't want to mislead the audience or you that I like stormed into someone's office and said, I won the Grey Cup, we're done here, I'm moving on. Like I didn't quit on them. It was after that Grey Cup, there was, we helped transition to new ownership, but with that came a different philosophy for what they thought the team was going to be. And
I
so
see.
basically the entire executive of the team was sent packing. So it
Wow.
was like what you see in sports. Like you saw the Jets just fired their like people just it happens in sports where it was amicable, but it was kind of a strategy shift that was decided at the top. Um, and so all of us, and we were all young too, which was
Right, right.
interesting. Like the team was run very well by the youngsters, which is another sort of sidebar I'll give your listeners, who I'm assuming are all probably in their 20s. Maybe not.
Probably.
Maybe you've got lots, but like, don't feel like you don't have something to offer just because you're younger than the other person at the table. Don't think you're the smartest person in the room. Don't like show up to every meeting thinking everyone else is an idiot, but don't diminish your value just because you're younger than other people. Because I can tell you from experience, when we had the most successful year to date in the history of that franchise, including today, it was when myself and there were four of us, four VPs who ran the team together. And there was no president at the time. We were running it as four VPs and we were all in our 20s. And the world didn't know that.
Really?
So, four guys in their 20s running the team. And I shouldn't say, and actually there was a woman who was with us as well, who was also young and also Schulich grad, who I think there was a period of time where it would have been the five of us all together. Doesn't matter. I mean, the point is, especially in an environment and in a world where technology is so prevalent and constantly changing, whether it's AI, whatever, all
Right.
the buzzword, all the things that are happening. Old people, I say old, whether I'm in that or not, I try not to consider myself that, but older people are so impressed by the smallest of things that are like a year ago. You probably see that all the time.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
oh my God, like I can ask this computer to write me a script for something, and people are like, holy shit. But like now, AI is like, I just put together a campaign speech as an example. I'm running again for the board, for the real estate board. AI can take my video speech. It cannot just translate it into any language, but it'll move my mouth on the video in my voice to speak the entire speech in any language. Now, I'm not using it publicly because I think something like that runs the risk of being disrespectful or maybe
Right.
inaccurate, or, it looks like I'm making fun of something when I'm actually just trying to communicate. But like, that's not even the most current stuff that's out there. And I see that
Right.
now, and I'm the old guy going, oh, well, what is happening? Like, how is that possible? But because of all that, younger folks who are doing these tools, creating these tools, they have a finger on the pulse of where the world is going in some ways, whether it's technology or trends or whatever, way more than some of the people who are the old blue hair folks at the table and have been there for 50 years. We can't live in this is how it's always been, so this is how we're going to do it society.
Adaptability,
It
yeah.
just it doesn't work. You have to adapt. You have to think and create and take initiative and take risks. That's how you finish ahead, right? Because
Right.
it's easy to compete now. Like I could go to AI and I could say, create me a business plan that mirrors insert company name here, that mirrors Amazon, start to finish. Give me everything. Who do I need? What do I pay them? What do I say to them? What's their script? Where do I get it? It can all be done for you, but our minds still have to stay ahead of that, right?
Right.
I don't think AI is taking over. I don't think we're all all going to be like on leashes with robots controlling us. But I do think those who succeed are going to be the ones who remember that you still have the ability to think and come up with things because of your own personal experience.
Start right here. Okay, perfect. Now, we did have a little bit of technical difficulties. Apologize for that, viewers. But we were just talking about Daniel's journey, and now we're trying to just segue from our goals into on the block realty. So, Daniel, if you don't mind just taking the lead from here.
Sure. So yeah, after the football team, I had some time to sort of recalibrate. Um, I actually first went into consulting, which we don't have to talk about too much, but I started a consulting company for about, I don't know, a couple years, where the Argos and MLSC and a lot of sports franchises were my clients. So it was kind of a
Oh,
win-win that I was because I didn't leave on bad terms from the football team. It was just
yeah.
circumstantial. So in the end, the CFL and them actually came and asked for help with things. So I was able to charge them from a new company for that and leverage some other relationships. But along the same time, we were expecting our fourth kid. Um, my wife was already in real estate. And I figured it was a good idea that now that I had a little bit more sort of free, not 9 to 5 work time, I would go get my real estate license more as just a backstop
Okay.
for her. Because I figured, you know what, it's busy. There's lots of different hours. If she's overwhelmed with clients and all that, I can have a license to help out. But as we've established, she's a Schulich student too. So when I got my license and I'm like, hey, got any clients for me? She's like, go screw yourself, find your own clients. So I clients were all from sports. So um it was kind of easier to build a book of business from the network that I had.
Right,
Um and we were working at a different brokerage and not loving the way it was run. I mean, the nature of real estate is mostly like if you're a real estate agent, you're an entrepreneur, right? Like you are
right,
your own business. You need to work with a brokerage, but you are your business. And so that's how we were working, but it didn't feel like the way we wanted to work. Plus, we didn't like the way the industry ran as
right,
a whole, which I know sounds like a very lofty thing to say as just a couple of individuals, but long story short was we decided to not the idea wasn't to build a brokerage. The idea was we wanted to build a new way to do real estate.
right,
And
right,
so we basically did the work to build an auction platform which allowed people to see what other people were bidding on homes, which was a real problem at the time. And it's still a problem now where when you make an offer on a house, other people don't know what the other offers are. So if you want to
right.
make an offer, you don't know what you're up against, which makes it
Yeah.
really hard for you to make an offer. Um, so anyway, we built a platform that was within the rules and allowed people to basically participate in auctions on properties where everything was transparent. And that was the beginning of things because we weren't able to build that within the brokerage we were at because the industry didn't like the idea because it left people like us vulnerable to not making as much money, arguably, because we were being more honest now, God forbid. Right. So we thought that that was a great opportunity to, leverage honesty and ethics, still make a lot of money because people want to associate with people doing the right thing.
Right.
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, it took off. We had a lot of media coverage. Um, it was just the two of us, and it was an auction company, but we built it within the shell of a brokerage, so we could still trade in real estate. Yada yada yada. Like that. That a lot. There's a lot to that story. That could be like a 12 volume podcast. But um, we also really like as you know, we like people and we like teaching people, and we wanted to make the industry better, not just by making bids transparent on homes, but by bettering the individuals who worked in the industry. So we started a podcast and an online community that was focused on just realtors and on just educating them. They didn't work for us,
Yeah, yeah.
but we did that. And that led to people liking the podcast and liking what we were teaching, where some of them started saying, "Hey, like, are you hiring agents at your brokerage?" And we're like, "Huh, maybe we should." So one thing led to another, and we started growing the brokerage with people who were like-minded because they had sort of, for the most part, they were people who had followed us on our podcast or had done our
Right.
training. And we've grown since then. I mean, we've built this out. We're now almost 30 people, um, all like-minded, good group of just like our people, a culture that makes sense. We're not building for the sake of building like a lot of brokerages. We do say
Right.
no to people who want to join us. Um, but we're now actively recruiting again, and we're working on getting more agents because it's been such a good experience, and we really enjoy that element of things. So we still do the auctions. We've white labeled it and rebranded it so any agent in the province can do an auction now, and also so that we're not watching it so closely ourselves, but we're really focused on building the brokerage. Um, Katie, my wife, she's the chair of RICO, which is the regulator in the province. They're the government sort of sub agency that regulates real estate. I'm a director on the Toronto Real Estate Board, which is the largest
Right.
real estate board in North America. So like we're pretty involved. I mean, I've been on York's alumni board for 15 years. I'm a senator at York.
Right.
So I think for us, it's just been about getting involved, getting our hands dirty. And now with this new podcast, it's the only reason I bring it up is because it ties into what we're talking about, because it's not about real estate, which is what our other podcast was. This new one is just about stories and motivation for people who think because of how old they are, certain things can't happen to them, good or
Right.
bad. And some of the people I've talked to on here, it's just unreal. And it was inspired by, me having health issues at a young age that don't happen to people when they're at my age. So the podcast is called Just a Number. And the idea is age is just a number is what the idea is. So, we talk to younger people who are achieving huge things you wouldn't expect, older folks who, maybe are doing things you don't expect out of older people,
Right.
survivors of really catastrophic situations who have just become inspirational stories. It's a really cool thing. It's been therapeutic for me, but I think
Right.
to your listeners, I mean, it's a great way for people who look in the mirror and say, I know I'm smart, but I'm not ready for this yet,
Right.
or whatever. It's hopefully gonna motivate some people out there and just get them thinking bigger for themselves.
Mm. No, 100%. And everyone on the channel watching right now, feel free to check it out. I'll probably post a link to it underneath like
Sure.
the
Yeah,
YouTube
yeah.
video thingy as well. But what
Yeah, no,
has
for sure.
your
That would be great.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. What has been your like mission with the podcast as well? I know you kind of touched upon it a little bit, but just your overall mission, what are you trying to achieve?
Uh, it's really about dispelling myths and giving people confidence out there, because I'd say at least half the stories are going to be about challenges people had. It's not
Right,
just a big, here's a bunch of great people and everybody's amazing. Why aren't you amazing? Like, it's not one of
right,
those. Like, it's about understanding that, the world doesn't come to an end even when you hit whatever roadblock that you hit, right? Like, I spoke yesterday. It's actually a guy, this episode probably won't come out for about a month, but it's a guy who used to, I think, consult the Schulich Career Center a long time ago.
interesting.
And he's a serial entrepreneur. He is in the Speakers Hall of Fame, the Canadian Speaking Hall of Fame.
Wow,
Um, and he had leukemia out of nowhere. And he's through leukemia when he was given a shred of a chance of survival. And among other things, I don't want to ruin the whole story. That the things I learned, he wrote a Broadway musical when he was in the hospital.
really?
Like the guy's literally on his deathbed and glass half full. What am I going to do with my time? How am I going to turn a shitty situation into a good one? And that's an example. Like that episode, it blew me away because I mean his story is different from mine, but there's similarities where we all hit really tough spots. And the
Right,
age is it's a subtext of the podcast. It doesn't even matter with age. It's really
right,
conceptually
right,
speaking. I don't care how old you are. Things happen that make life tough. You tell yourself stories that get in the way of you being, successful or progressing with what you want to do. The point of the podcast is to share stories of people that aren't meant to make you feel bad about yourself and make you feel like, why aren't I doing more? It's the
or
opposite. It's
rather
meant to
inspire you, right?
reinforce, yeah, inspire. Like the three words I use are inspiration, motivation, and education. That's what it's all about.
Right.
But it's not a mushy, like I mean, we're talking like my personality is the same.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
conversations and joking around. It's not like, here are your three life lessons you require to be this. It's not a TED talk. Although I guess TED Talks are good. So bad example. But it's not like a textbook. It's meant to be real conversation. It's not for the most part celebrities or anything like that. It's just real people, cool things and go with real
Right.
challenges and and learn from it. And hopefully other people can learn from it too.
Right. And that's the really great thing about podcasts. Like I've tried understanding podcast learning so I could, because I'll be honest with you, I used to be an introvert. It was so hard for me to talk to other people. And then for some reason, I had the idea of the podcast, right? So before starting this, I started to, just research different people who did podcasts. And something I realized is that the most successful ones, they always tackled on the journey of the person rather than just question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, right? And that's something I try to do as well, just asking about your journey from Schulig to the Argos to wherever else, right? And I
Mhm.
like I like that system a lot more because I mean, number one, I can make jokes in it. It's a lot more easier. Like even in my first podcast, I'm pretty sure half the time I was making fun of the guy, right? But it's good in terms of you can actually create a real connection rather than like an interview-based podcast, right? It shows your personality a bit more. And again, that's important in all aspects of business, consulting, and especially sales. You can't do sales if you're
Sure.
no personality, right?
Yeah,
But
well, that's it. Yeah, conversation is key.
right,
There's a time where there needs to be a formula to things, and if you're on, a time limit, but I mean, this is an example. This call might have had a time limit. Doesn't mean you need to adhere to it, right? If
right,
if conversation is working, you do what,
keep it
the
working.
situation allows you to do.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember this one time I had a coffee chat with someone. It was supposed to be 30 minutes long. It lasted for like a good 3 hours. It's really
Wow.
interesting. Like, thankfully it was on a weekend, so I had nothing else to do. But it's just like it was nice, right? Like I got to speak to the person. We helped each other, whatever else it might be. And that it's nice to have that. Like most of my coffee chats don't last 30 minutes just because I actually enjoy having a conversation with the person, right? It's not a transactional thing. Like, for example, the first two podcasts I did with Aisha and Iman, I'll be honest with you, we were supposed to start it at 4 p.m., right? We delayed it a little bit because, the bus or something was a bit late. But then from 4:30 till 6:30, we were just laughing too much. We couldn't take it. Like, we couldn't record the episodes because we
Hey,
were just
it's
laughing.
some of that is good stuff though. Some of that's good stuff.
Right,
We did that yesterday. We were recording ads for our brokerage and it was supposed to be serious and it just turned out being we're
right.
basically like, screw this. Like, that's not who we are. So half the ad is just going to be us laughing. Like, it's just
Right,
be real. Like, because
right.
if it's who you are, it's who you are. And it's easier to put the real you out there because then when people see you and meet you and talk to you, you're not
It's
putting
a
on a
lot
face of
easier.
something that you're
Right,
not.
right.
Yeah. Like, they're meeting the person they met online or on the podcast or whatever. So that's one thing I really try to do, whether it's a talk like this or whether it's speaking to groups or my podcast is like what's the value in putting on a face like what so that you get more clicks or so that
Right.
you like and then what so someone finds you wants to talk to you and they're like who the hell are you like you're not the guy I heard on the podcast like you're some like whatever
This
whatever
sounds
they
like
think
online dating.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't know, but yeah, probably. Uh, I mean, it is very interesting though that with social media and all that, there's just such a need for people to show something because they think it's what people want to see,
Right, right,
right? And that's not how you cut through, right? Like
right.
there's value in copying. It's actually a buddy of mine who was one of the VPs with me at the Argos, my closest friend in the world, and he just got an amazing job actually. Shout out to him. He just became the chief revenue officer of Square, at mobile
Wow.
payment company. So he's legit. Um, but he just put something up on LinkedIn saying, what was it? It was something like, what's my biggest strategy for business development or something like that. And the answer was copying other people. And he comes by it honestly, and it's true because no idea any of us has is the
Right.
first time somebody's
It's
thought of it,
unique. Right,
right?
right,
There's nothing wrong with emulating stuff you see that's really smart out there and just giving it a little bit of your own flair, right? Like
right,
I'm sure there's another podcast out there even called Just a Number, right? I'm sure there's podcasts out there where everybody's trying to find inspirational stories, whatever. If I wasn't into it and passionate about doing it, I shouldn't be doing it. Like if I'm doing it because I think that's what people want to hear and that's why I'm doing it, I'm not doing it to make money. There's no
right,
money in it. There was no money in our other podcast. But if it puts a smile on your face and if it can inspire somebody else, that's what makes me feel good, right?
right.
Like you're doing this podcast, you're not monetizing it, right? Well, maybe
No,
you
of
are. And
course
if you
not.
are,
No, there's no way I
congratulations. But
can.
well, I mean, who knows, right? Like people start listening to this stuff and everything starts somewhere, right?
Right.
And you never know. But if you don't go into things with this clear intention of like, if this doesn't happen, it's a failure, then you'll never be upset, right? You
Right.
take out of things what it gives you and you
Everything you
roll with
can.
it, and then you just
Right.
make it better.
Right. That's a lot of my side hustles. I can't even call them businesses, just side hustles in the past. Like, I'll be honest with you, I used to sell replica clothing as well, right? Just because there's such
Yeah.
a massive market in high school. But even with that, like a lot of the other competitors that I had in my area, a lot of them were really clear cut on just chasing money, right? But I was chasing
Mm.
on kind of fixing up the things, making the customer service better. Like for example, the packaging,
Mm.
making sure the wait time isn't as much. And like that's where I really had the fun, right? The money comes. Like there's this one quote I heard, chase excellence because then money chases you, right? And that's
Yeah.
something,
Well, that's it. It follows for sure. For
right,
sure.
yeah. And that's something I strive to achieve rather than like, everyone wants to go Goldman Sachs investment banking. I kind of just want to learn as much as I can about whatever it might be, corporate banking, investment banking, consulting, finance in general, sales, entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
tech, the whole lot, right? And I feel that knowledge is it's just really it's a gift, right? As corny as it sounds, it really is just
It
a
is.
gift. Yeah.
It is. I mean, I'm starting to question that whole joke of like you reach a point where when something goes in, something else has to come out. Like, because now I feel like again, like I'm not old, but like now I learn things. I'm like, shit, did I just forget something now? Like now I've got this new piece of knowledge, but what do I now not know that I knew yesterday? But definitely you got to keep taking stuff in. Like what's the point, right? Like if you're
Right,
just
right,
gonna be on cruise control the rest of your life, then like
right,
you're kind of wasting space if you're just on cruise control. And I don't
right.
mean that in a mean way, like, but just take
It's a waste of an
advantage of the time
opportunity,
you've got.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Just
A lot
learn
of my
things and have
friends,
experiences.
right? A lot of my friends, they're all day just scrolling on TikTok, Instagram Reels and stuff, right?
Mm.
But the times that we go out, like for example, this one time, I forgot the area, but we went for fishing, right? I have a friend, so he cast a fishing hook. Like I found someone, I asked him, "Yo, can you fix up the fishing hook?" He was like, "For sure," because we had no idea what we were doing, right? Just like five random guys who didn't know how to catch a
Mm.
fish.
I love
So
it.
he fixes the fishing hook. We only have one fishing rod, by the way. Like we went to Canadian Tire. These guys were planning on buying a BB gun for some reason. Completely
Oh
got
wow.
distracted. So we bought the fishing rod. We went to the place. It was forgot the name again. But basically he cast the rod all the way. He just unties it all the way. He throws it out. The actual string itself just falls on the water, right? So like we're all losing our shit. We're like, what do we do now, right? And they're begging me to go inside because all of them they don't know how to swim or anything. So they're begging me to go inside. There's parasites inside, right? Like they're expecting me to go inside, dive, get the fishing rod. So then what we do is we just
Unreal.
slowly pull for like 10 minutes, just one line until we get the rod. Our entire fishing
Oh
trip was
man.
over. The good thing though is one of us, we bought like pre-made burgers. So we just ate soggy burgers for the entire trip. But the idea is just
Good time.
the idea is just like the experience, right? Like we were able to just have fun, even though we didn't catch a single
Totally.
fish, even though we didn't. I still hate the guy for throwing the fishing rod over, but it's
It would have
just
been crazy if when you finished reeling in the line that there was actually a fish on the end of it. That would have been
yeah,
crazy.
that would have been so nice.
But yeah, no, but those are the experiences, right? Like
Right,
you need to do things like that, and you're better off having done it and completely blown it, right? Than
right.
not having gone at all,
Of
right? Like
course, yeah.
otherwise what? You would have been sitting somewhere scrolling TikTok all day. That would have been your
Exactly,
day instead.
exactly. Right,
So, and that's a story you're going to remember,
right,
like
for a
that's
long
something
time.
now the five of you, like that kind of connect. I'm sure you were all buddies before that, but like
Yeah,
that's like the reminisce thing for sure. So,
right.
that's cool.
And like even just late nights, I won't go into detail because it may not be the best thing to record and post, but late night we would do some pretty dumb things, but those dumb things I hold really close to my heart just because, it's us. Like that's
Yeah,
my kind of personality, just doing dumb things, but locking in whenever we have to, right? And
that's
I
it.
feel
We
that,
we didn't.
no,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel that's what life is really about, just the experiences. But keep on saying what you were saying.
For sure. I was just gonna say, yeah, like we don't condone breaking the law, but sometimes, you got experiences that that's what life is all about. Like that honestly is what it's all about. If you just go through life, checking boxes,
Right,
nothing nothing wrong with that, right? Like
right,
I don't want to come I feel like, some people might interpret that as like an arrogant way of looking at things. And I know that people have requirements that they have. Like, and same thing for me. Like if I didn't have to earn money to pay bills, I would live life differently for sure. Like there are still things I need to do. So I don't live a life of like laissez-faire. I wake up
right,
in the morning and I like, kill a two for a beer and then like lie and watch football in my underwear all day. Like that's not
right,
life. But at the same time, if somebody calls and says, hey, we're going to such and such in a couple weeks, want to come? Once upon a time, I would default to there's no way I can do that. And now it's like, let me see, maybe, right? Like,
right.
like at least open with maybe, don't open with no to things.
No,
And then just prioritize the stuff that is good. Like, you're not going to do everything.
right,
Just try to do as much as you can without burning out and without going crazy.
right. And actually like it's so crazy that you mentioned this because last year my friends asked me if we could go, I think Banff, just for like a weekend. At that time I said no, there's
Nice there.
absolutely no way. I'm not even gonna bother asking my parents. It's a straight no, right? But this year one of my friends asked me if we could travel to Saudi and then Bahrain, like where I was born. It's like a island off the
Wow.
Middle East. So he asked me
Mhm.
for that, and at first I was like, "Yo, are you sure? Are you sure we can drop like 5K just to go to these two
Yeah.
places and come back?" But he was like, "Just try asking my parents, right?" So now I'm actually contemplating like maybe we'll go. I'll be honest with you. At first he was going just for a girl, which is out of my. It's crazy in my
Motivation.
opinion. Dropping 5K for a girl, it can't even drop 100 for me. But it's nice the experiences in of itself, right? Just being able to open your horizon, not say no immediately, and always not say yes, but open your doors up for opportunities, right?
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. Try and do it. I mean, and if you don't, you don't, right? But
Right,
there's a different vibe when you at least tell yourself there's always a possibility, right?
right,
It changes your mindset. You don't have to do all the things, but just saying, you know what? Anything I want to do, literally anything you want to do is possible. Like I
right,
do believe in that, right?
right,
Like
right,
you just need to commit, prioritize, and put the resources in, and you sacrifice things to achieve other things, right? So it's not as simple as saying, "Hey, I want to be a millionaire."
Right.
You can be. I believe anybody can be, but what at what cost, right? Like,
Right. Right.
because some people they do it and they alienate their friends or they whatever, right? So it kind of starts with understanding what's the most important to you and then kind of bucketing in, okay, now that I know what's most important to me, what do I need to achieve in each of those buckets, or what do I want to achieve, and what is it sacrificing in order to achieve it?
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, everybody's got a different set of,
Outlook.
risk
Yeah.
tolerance and all those things.
Right.
Yeah.
And now, with that, I think that kind of concludes the podcast segment of the section. Right now, thank you very much to the viewers, and thank you very much, Daniel, for coming on, kind of taking us off script because I'll be honest with you, that's a lot more enjoyable, just talking about things rather than question answer, as I mentioned previously. So thank you so much, and feel free to always check out Just a Number, Daniel's new podcast. Drop a few comments here and there saying that you're from KKC Consulting, that podcast. But of course, feel free to check it out.
Yeah.
And Daniel, once again, just thank you. And if you have any other notes or anything else you would like to say about Just a Number,
I mean, I'll give you, I guess I'll give you the links to it. It's on all the things, Spotify, Apple Podcast. It's on
oh, that's
YouTube.
sick.
So like I
That's
do
sick.
videotape these as well.
Right.
But literally I just posted the first episode yesterday.
Yesterday, I
So
saw on your
it's
story that.
it's yeah, it's only got the intro episode right now, which is the only one that's just me. The rest of them are all with a guest, but the intro is literally just an intro. Um, but yeah, no, I'm excited about it. So yeah, if anybody wants to check it out, do all the things, subscribe, comment, rate it, like it, do the same thing to this podcast,
Thank you.
hook Amara up.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
and if anybody wants to follow me or find me also, I'm not a TikToker at all, but I mean LinkedIn or Instagram's where I spend most of my time. So
Right.
I can give you my handle there too if you want to share that. But
For
people are
sure.
welcome to find me there.
I'll
Yeah,
post on the
that's
Instagram
I'm
post. Yeah.
Steinfeld says there. Yeah. Well, actually, you know where I am. Yeah. You and I talk on Instagram. So that's
Right.
if people actually want to communicate with me, that's the easiest way to get me for sure.
Right.